All right. Welcome to Rock Your Life with Arian Alexander. I think you're going to love this episode today. I have a special friend on with me. Her name is Shelley, and I've known Shelley for a long time. And we're going to do laser coaching. And every time I do laser coaching, I don't know what's going to happen. I've been a life coach and a business coach for 15 plus years now. And one thing that I love about working with humans, which we all are, of course, is that, we never know where the conversation is going to take us. So I invited Shelley on. I've known her for a lot of years. We both got a master's degree in spiritual psychology from the University of Santa Monica. And she's just an awesome person. And she lives in Seattle now, not in LA. And she popped in my head and I was like, hey, do you want to do some laser coaching on the air? And she's so courageous. She said, yes. Can you believe it? So I'm so happy she's here with us, and we're going to dive right in and do some laser coaching. And as always with laser coaching, I encourage you to follow along as if you're getting coaching on whatever your area of opportunity is, wherever you feel challenged in your life. Just follow along with the conversation and do the exercises that we do, and you'll see how awesome it is. So, hi, Shelley.
Hi there.
I'm so happy.
Having me.
Oh my God, I'm so happy you're here, and I'm so glad you had the courage to say yes. So thank you.
Yikes.
I know.
You're welcome.
I know it's like scary to just come on and, you don't know what's going to happen, and we know it's going to be good.
No idea, but I adore you. So
thank you. All right, cool. So Shelley, what is it that you wanted some laser coaching on today?
I think I would love just some laser coaching on like how can I best rediscover my joy? Whether that's in like joy in my friendships and my relationships, with COVID in the last year, and a job that I'm not thrilled with, but that I'm super grateful to have in this time we're in. It's just the weight of it I'm noticing is very present. Okay. And I'm not as joyful as I used to be, and I want to get that back.
Well, you certainly came to the right person for that, didn't you?
I did.
It's so funny because I didn't know what you were, I don't ask beforehand what you want coaching on. It's so hilarious that you want more joy in your life as you come to like the joy girl. But it's interesting because when we dive into things, I've had my own experience with, being in your shoes too, of like not having as much joy as I would like. So I totally empathize and with you in that. Okay. So tell me about this. You want some more joy in your life again, in your friendships and your relationships and this job that you're not thrilled with, but you're happy to have. And you just don't feel like that joy factor is as high as it has been in the past.
Correct.
And how does that feel within you? If you're to name some feelings around it.
It feels sad and lonely and a little dark, a little isolated. Let's see. Kind of the feeling like I'm in it all on my own. Like everything's up to me.
I just think it's so interesting because I hear this a lot now with COVID, because it has isolated us, so I'm like, oh, this makes sense that you're feeling not this joy factor and this feelings of being isolated and it's all up to me. COVID is a big factor in this for sure, because it has, as we all know, has isolated us from, doing our normal activities. So it makes sense that you would, that joy factor would dim a little bit, but we're going to dive into the inner world for you to really see how to get that back within yourself. But I just think it's great that you already said this, that it feels sad, lonely, a little dark, isolated. I think a lot of people listening can appreciate that and relate to that. And I know it's not fun to say. So again, I'm really proud of you for having the courage to say it, because like that's, those don't feel great. When you're having a moment, do they?
No, and they've been amplified with COVID. Like, I wish I could say that it's all because of it, but I think I had been feeling that I've been watching myself kind of diminish in the last like 2 or 3 years from when I was living in California and really around the sunshine and the happy people. And even though it wasn't always great, we had sunshine. Seattle is dark and depressing. Even though I grew up here, I now see why I didn't live here for 20 years. So
Yeah. Yeah.
It's kind of amplifying everything.
Right. Very different from sunshiny California, that's for sure.
Very
For the
different.
rain. And yeah, that makes sense too, that doesn't feel great in your system. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So how does this manifest for you?
It definitely manifests in my physical being, like whether it's headaches or digestive issues or just, it's very physical for me. Um, and it's almost to the point where it's really hard to tap into the emotional part of myself too. So
Mm-hmm.
I find myself just kind of zoning out with television or a book
Mm-hmm.
or
Mm-hmm.
just kind of being not fully present. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm somebody who really is kind of like you. I want to be fully present with who I'm with. That's the most important. And really remembering that I have to be fully present with myself isn't always easy. I find myself watching myself more frequently
Okay.
than actually embodying myself.
Okay. Okay. And if you were to say, what are you making this mean about yourself?
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
That it all comes back to that I'm not worthy.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm not worthy of radiant health. I'm not worried of happiness. The deeper part of, am I not worthy of love? You know, is it okay to love myself and put myself first and do that in a non-selfish way? Because it feels very selfish to love myself first.
Mm-hmm. Well, you just went there, didn't you?
Oh,
You just went right in. Good girl. I mean, it takes most people a while to get to that. I remember when I went to a Tony Robbins workshop, 20 years ago, and he was like, all the issues that all of people have basically boil down to like 5 things. And it was like, I'm not lovable. I won't be loved. I'm not worthy. I don't deserve it. And like 2 more. So I always remember that because it kind of always boils down to that.
kind of
So these
does.
thoughts within ourselves make up this story. So to just trace what your mental mind is telling you, it's like you experience this kind of lack of joy and then feel sad and lonely and dark and isolated and think it's all up to you. And then that manifests into the physical experience of headaches and digestive issues and not feeling great. And then you start telling yourself a story about yourself that you're not worthy of deserving joy and happiness and relationships and love. And then that story just keeps spinning. It just keeps proving itself over and over
Exactly.
again. Yeah. And
Exactly.
I can relate to this. I know everyone listening can relate to this because we all have this. We all have these patterns and these stories that we've told ourselves for years. And what happens is our unconscious creates this experience that, let's say, I'm not worthy. And then the unconscious is really what's driving the show. Like the unconscious drives 90% or something of our experience of life. Our conscious mind only drives about 10% of it. I don't know if those are the right percentages, but like something like that. So the unconscious, if it thinks I'm not worthy, then it's going to prove it. It has to prove itself to itself. So it's going to put you in all these situations and experiences for you to go, yep, see, once again, I'm not worthy. And then it's like, cool, okay, let's do it again. And so that's what our ego mind does. That's what our unconscious mind does, is just keeps reinforcing this story that's not even true of I'm not worthy. I just remember one of our teachers that from our School of Spiritual Psychology, Ron Holnick, would always say, it's either we're all worthy or none of us are worthy.
Yeah. I remember that too.
Right? But you can hear that, but it doesn't mean you're going to experience it.
Right.
Right? So it, this opportunity is to release that story, but it's just not integrated in you yet. So we'll do some stuff today to, help clear this and see where we get, see where we go. So Cool. So are there other stories? What other stories do you tell yourself about yourself?
Um, that I'm responsible for it all. That for so in some way, shape, or form, all of this is my fault and I chose it. And
Mm.
um, and that I'm, if I'm not successful, which goes back to the I'm not worthy part, I think. And just always having to prove myself.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Just this deep, and I don't know where that comes from. Just like I have to prove that I'm worth my paycheck and I'm worth a roof over my head and I'm worth being a good friend or
Mm-hmm.
being someone somebody wants to be friends with.
Mm-hmm.
And that if I have to work 20 hours a day to do it, I'll do it because the harder, like work has to be hard. Like
Mm-hmm.
this
Mm-hmm.
crazy belief that work has to be hard.
I think most of the planet has that. It's like in our collective consciousness that we have to work hard to prove ourselves to be worthy. So you're right on track. And you're right on track with most of this. I mean, it's just, this is like ingrained in so many people. So you're not alone in this. It's not the unique Shelley, thoughts. These are very, worldwide thoughts and beliefs that other people have locked in. The good news is that you have tools to release this as well, which is great. And one thing that I always look at when these experiences come up and these feelings and these things that we tell ourselves is that, what if they're not bad? What if this part of you that thinks you're not worthy, that just is a thought, what if it's not a bad part of you? What if it's just a part of you neutrally?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's when we start making it wrong and saying it should be different and like it shouldn't be here, that the judgments start piling on yourself. So you just told me a whole bunch of judgments, of like, oh, if I put myself first, I can't put myself first. I can't love myself. And we're going to address that loving myself too. I want to come back to that for sure. But I'm responsible for it all. It's all my fault. Like all these judgments and just keep piling on because of this, this thought that like, oh, I'm not experiencing my full joy and therefore I'm not worthy. And, then, oh, and that's not okay. And that's where the judgments are really rolling in. And the judgments, as you know, are what keep us in our story.
Right.
And spinning.
Definitely spinning.
Yeah. Yeah. So what if none of this is wrong? And when you say, I'm responsible for it all, I would say that's accurate, but not in the way that you're thinking of it. Because you're like, oh, I'm responsible for it. So it's all my fault. Like again, do you see the wrongness in that?
Right.
And what if the possibility of life just shows up in us and wants to experience the full spectrum? So life is a perfect metaphor of what happens in ourselves. So you can look at life this way. We have sunshine every day. Beautiful. Thank you for sunshine. We have the moon every night. Beautiful. Thank you for the moon. What do we also have? Hurricanes and floods and earthquakes and all kinds of shit that like wrecks the planet. So life in its natural state is already showing us that it wants to show up in all aspects. It doesn't just show up in the sun and the moon. It doesn't show up in a blue sky every day. It shows up with blizzards and, whatever, like all volcanoes erupting and all kinds of destructive things that we also look at as not okay, as like, oh, it's so bad when this tragic thing happens, which it is, of course, for the people that are in it. But when we're just looking at the metaphor of life as itself shows up in joy, as much as it shows up in not joy. It's the neutral, life is neutral. Life wants to experience all aspects of the spectrum of emotions and experiences. And if you can start to actually have an allowance for that, of like, oh, life shows up sometimes in me as joy. And then sometimes it wants to experience this thing called loneliness or isolation or sadness. And like, cool. That's just how life's wanting to present itself this day. Just like life will present itself as a hurricane some days.
Right. The weather metaphors.
I've never even thought of that, but it's like, it's such a good
so
metaphor,
true.
right?
It really, as we just got, like I got snowed in with like a foot of snow over the weekend. So it's quite fitting.
Right. You did. You just got snowed in. So life was like, I want to show up as a shit ton of snow today. So it did. And we can say, well, that's wrong and bad, but life's like, no, we're good. Like, this is part of it.
Right.
Like, you live in a cold place, you're gonna get snow.
So true.
So what do you hear in what I'm saying?
What really kind of resonated with me and reminded me was the element of neutrality, and just looking at, I think with me especially, I can pivot really quickly. I can be thrown off my game per se very quickly because of the physical manifestation things happen before I can like take a step back and look at it from just a higher altitude of, well, what am I thinking right now that could be causing me to feel this way? Whereas when I won't feel well, and then I just kind of go down that pattern. So just the reminder to bring it back to neutral and to see what can be released through just that step alone. A lot of that really hit home and made sense. And it's tricky because, it's like, I do know the tools, and yet there are moments where I'm like, well, but why am I not using them on myself? So I make that, even knowing the stuff, right and wrong. Like I even add judgment to myself for, I have this degree and I know these tools, but why am I not giving myself the gift of time to use them and work on myself with them?
Yeah. Yeah. Good. It's great to use your spiritual know-how against yourself. It's always I really highly recommend
it's so crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And I will sit there and I'm like, I could just do this, but I'll watch Netflix instead. So
yeah, Shelley,
weaponizing myself with them.
Right. You're weaponizing yourself against yourself. This is what I'm hearing is there's againstness and there's wrongness. And the way through this is not through with more againstness and more wrongness. It's with compassion and acceptance.
Right.
Because even in that moment of watching Netflix instead of journaling or, reading an uplifting book or anything that would support you, even in that, the acceptance of, you know what, I just need to watch a couple Netflix shows and that's good. And like, that's self-care, because that is like, to zone out it is self-care. And so the more that you can start to, even in the pain, neutralize the pain too. Like when the physical, and I know it's hard because I've been in those positions too of like, are you kidding me? Like, how am I neutral this? But the work of Byron Katie, yes? Yeah. So it's if you're listening and you don't know the work of Byron Katie, just Google Byron Katie, BYRON Katie, KATIE.com or thework.com. And it's 4 questions and turnarounds. And she does a lot around pain, around physical pain. And basically it's that, life is always showing us the reality of what it's supposed to be in every moment, because if it was supposed to be different, it would be. So the work is a great thing to walk through this for sure. I'll let you do that on your own, but it's so great. I just love it because it's like even with pain, it's here. The reality is it's here. So for me to go in judgment on my own pain, which I've had, emotional or physical, and think it's not supposed to be here is just fighting with reality.
Right.
So that's where the presence comes in, and the neutrality is like, oh, does this pain suck? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's neutral. It's here. It's the snowstorm. It's here because it's supposed to be here. Because if it wasn't supposed to be here, it wouldn't be here in this moment.
That, yeah, that brings me back to acceptance, which it's tricky when life gives you lots of health stuff to be in that acceptance space and the neutrality space.
Yeah. Well, yes, I hear you. And I don't know what it's like to be in all those physical conditions. I know when I've been in my own physical pain and different challenges. And even when I had my depression a few years ago, that was like the worst thing on the planet. It's horrible. Ugh, I wouldn't wish that upon anyone. But I do remember in that thinking, there's something on the other side of this. Like there's something here for me, and this fucking sucks. And I wish it wasn't happening because it's so awful. But I really trust that life supports me enough that there's something on the other side of this. I can't see it yet. And I'm not going to see it till I'm on the other side, because that's how it works, right? We don't see it till we're done, and we can reflect back and then we're like, oh, now I get it. Oh, okay, cool. So it's the same for you of like, you don't have to love your pain.
Right.
It can still suck. Migraines, girl, I mean, I've never had a migraine. I don't even know, but I just think this is terrible from everything I know about it. So you don't have to love it, but it's just the acknowledgement of it's happening because it's supposed to happen. And I don't really know why. And there doesn't have to be a why, but there'll be something on the other side to teach me, to show me, to reveal to me. And I think that's where your spiritual faith, your spiritual trust comes in.
Yes, I do agree with that. I've definitely been tested with that in the last few years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you've had a lot of physical stuff. So it's like,
yeah,
your journey in this lifetime is to move through this, to learn whatever it is, right? It's like, because I don't have all those physical things. I have other things, right? But you've got a life of like physical stuff. So it's like life's showing up in you with these physical experiences in order to reveal something to you, for you to reveal something to yourself. And it's not like, I don't know, like, it's not like big ahas, like, oh my God, I get it. It's just like, if it's here to reveal to you more compassion for yourself, hi, really? Awesome. That's it. That's all. Like, that's all we ever need is more compassion for self.
Right.
Instead of being against ourselves and like thinking it's not okay. We're going to take a little break. I'm so glad you're here. And I'm just so, again, proud of you for your courage to come. We're going to be right back with, we're going to dive into some more things. I'm going to go back to what you said about loving yourself. And I really want to dish this out with you because I think there's some juicy stuff in here. So that you're listening to Rock Your Life with Ari and Alexander. I'm here doing some laser coaching with Shelley. And you're listening to Fun for Life Radio on the Dash Radio Network. And we'll be right back. Okay, cool. This is great. It's great.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's great. This is so good. It's so juicy. It's so good. There's so much here. I'm like, oh my God, there's so much.
Oh, I know. I haven't talked to anybody in forever. So.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good. I can't, the only thing is, Dana, sorry, I'm talking to my producer. Dana, I don't have a time stamp on this Zoom, so I don't know how long this is, but you know what? I'm sure we started like 7:10. So I'll just timestamp it from, we're just going to keep going until around 8, and then that's long enough. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, cool. All
Is
right.
my voice too scratchy?
No, my voice is very scratchy. I'm like scratchy today for some reason. All right. Okay, we're back to Rock Your Life with Arian Alexander. And we've been talking with Shelley about how she wants to have more joy in her life. We haven't talked about that yet because there's so many other things to talk about. But what we found from this conversation with Shelley already is that this wanting to have more joy in her life, how she experiences that with herself is feeling sad and lonely and isolated, which I'm sure so many of you can appreciate because of COVID. It has magnified and amplified this experience for so many of us. And with Shelley, it also manifests in physical things of headaches and digestive issues. And so we're just really, working through this of how, what if life wants to show up in you neutrally and experience all these things? Mad, sad, glad, scared, sad, lonely, isolated, joyful, happy. Like life doesn't discern between the emotions. It's the human form that says one's bad and one's good. One should be here and one shouldn't be here. So we're really kind of peeling back the layers of, being a little more neutral and accepting of life exactly as it is this moment. I love the work of Byron Katie because she always says that reality, like, why would we fight with reality? Because reality will always win, but only 100% of the time. And I love that.
Wow.
Right?
That's a good reminder. That is such a
Yeah.
good reminder.
Because it's like, even if I sit here and I go, oh, I should have more money and I should be more fit and I should have a boyfriend and I should have a dog or whatever it is, like, I'm fighting with reality. And my reality says, I have this much in my bank account. My weight is this. My clothing size is this. I don't have a boyfriend in this moment. I don't have a dog, but I dog sit a lot. Like, reality is showing me what life is. So why am I fighting with it? Why am I saying it should be different?
Right. Oh, such a good, that's actually really powerful.
Right.
Forgot about that one.
Yeah. So like, reality is showing you how it wants to show up right now.
Oh, I don't like reality right now.
Well, and see, this is part of it. This is part of it. This is so much part of it. And it's not saying you have to, there's a lot of layers here, but it's not saying you have to love it, but it's like, can you be in the compassion of, this is what it looks like right now, and the acceptance of that. And then we can always take steps to change things, of course. But it's like we can't change it from a place of thinking it should be different and judging it. And, it's like, okay, this is what it is. And I can appreciate and have compassion for my experience right now. And I'm going to move forward into something else too.
Yes. I tend to get stuck on the end now part.
Yeah, as most people do.
I know.
Stuck on the end. Yes, we want the goal instead of being in the journey.
Yeah.
So
I love a
Shelley,
good journey, but
right. Well, you are a storyteller. She's a producer. Shelley's an awesome television producer. So she knows how to tell a good story, which she does very well in her own mind as well.
Exactly. It's kind of biting me in life sometimes.
I'm a really good storyteller in my head.
Yes, you are.
My world. Okay, I want to go back to something you said that I think ties into this too, is this place of I want to love myself. So tell me more about that.
Oh, for me, I have a huge heart and I love on everyone, but I have a really hard time being the mirror and loving on myself. And I just lost my grandma a few weeks ago, and I was with family and was so fortunate to be able to be there, and she didn't die of COVID. So we were able to like be present. And I had these thoughts in my head of, wow, is anybody going to show up for me like I'm showing up for everybody else? And it was like, does it matter? Like, why am I putting so much emphasis in my own world on, is it going to matter who shows up for me? But I think really deep down, it's like this little kid who just wants to be loved. And And with our training, I do know that it all comes from loving ourselves first. So I feel like I'm very trying to find my way through the muck on what it feels like to Louise Hay myself and say, look in my eyes and tell myself I love me.
Well,
And I think it goes back to the worth, like the self-worth element.
yeah. Yeah. Well, again, I'm sure so many people listening can relate to this. This is a big thing where I hear this a lot of like, I can really take care of and love everyone else, but I'm not great at loving myself and taking care of myself. So I really get it. And I'm sure so many people listening are appreciating your experience in this so they can learn from themselves. So again, thanks for your presence and your honesty here.
Welcome.
And would you be willing to play with this a little bit?
Anything for you. But yes, actually I would, because it's coming up obviously for a reason.
Yeah.
I definitely believe that. So.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's here. It's because it's here. It's because
Yeah.
it wants to be shifted. Okay, so what your point of view is right now, how you're walking through life, what I hear is I give love out, and yet I don't give myself love. Like it's kind of two things. Like it's an external experience and then an internal experience. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. So there's a fallacy in that, because it's looking at like external and internal as separate, and it's thinking that you're separate from who you truly are. What do I mean by that? There's no I love myself. This is one thing that I'm very I get very excited about, because it's and I even think it's a misnomer in the spiritual community and teachings. You can't love yourself. You can't love yourself because you already are the love. You just forgot.
Right.
There's no loving myself. You are the loving. You have been brought into this planet as the loving. So to think that you have to then love yourself is like, that doesn't make sense, because you already are the loving. It's releasing anything that has clouded you from remembering that, which is a heck of a lot easier than I need to love myself. So that's like me. We're on, audio, not video, but so people can't see us, but I'm 5'10". So me saying, that's like me saying I'm tall, right? That's like
Yes,
me, right? That's like me saying, I need to make sure I know that I'm tall. I need to tell myself that I'm tall. I need, I see tall people out there, but I don't think I'm tall. So I need to make sure I know that I'm tall. Do you see? It doesn't make sense, because I'm just tall. Like, I don't have to do anything. I don't have to remember it. I'm just tall. So it's the same thing with loving. There's no telling yourself you love yourself, because you are it already. It's like one of the stories that, again, we would hear at our spiritual school is that it's like the statue of David when Maya Angelou did not create the David. Yes, Michelangelo created the David. And when he was asked how he created the statue of David, which is extraordinary, right? He said, I'm paraphrasing this. He said, I didn't create the David. The David was already there inside the block of marble. I just took away all the pieces that weren't David. So I just got chills as I said that. So he was like, no, I don't have to create anything. I just release the parts that aren't the truth of this statue of David. We're the same way. You already are the loving. It's already here. You are the David in yourself. So there's no loving yourself. It's already here. It's just letting anything release that stopped you from remembering who you truly are.
Right.
So then when you look at this outside inside, there's no difference. It's all loving. It's like when you're overflowing with loving because you are the loving, you're not thinking about I'm giving all this love because you are the loving, and they're the loving. Like there's not this energetic like difference. It's everybody's loving. Everybody's in the loving. But when we create a separation of, oh, I give love to them, but I don't give love to myself, and then you're creating separateness with all these other light beings that are just loving as well, instead of just playing in the love fest that's already here.
Mm-hmm. I forgot how much I missed your love fest. Because it's so easy to remember it when you're around that like-minded people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And just the cloud, you're right, the clouded nature of all of the layers that are blocking me from just being the loving.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And how do you
experiencing my loving?
Yeah. And so right now, like in this moment, like how do you experience yourself more as the loving? Like, what does that feel like to you?
I mean, for me, it feels just completely lighter and happier. And it is that joyful thing I'm looking to bring more of into my life. For me, it's like trying to figure out how to do it when I'm sitting in a room working 20 hours a day by myself.
Yeah.
It's like trying to maintain that, like this connection that we have right now outside of that connection.
Yeah.
Like to really hone in and honor that connection within myself.
Yeah. 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 And I totally hear that and encourage you to let that rest for a little bit. Mm-hmm. Right? That like what's next in the house, because it just is taking you out of this moment.
The moment.
Like I just encourage you to like let the loving that you are just wash over you and into you. Like just be in this moment of like gushy love fest. And do you see? Because this is how you build it. Because the mind wants us to go, oh, what's next? How am I gonna do it? Oh my God, what if I don't do it? And then my joy, and then I'm 20 hours working, blah, blah, blah. It wants to race into the next moment. And then it takes us out of this moment that is a pure love fest, exactly as it needs to be right now.
Right.
So, I get it. I got a monkey mind too that wants to race forward and wants to know the house, but it's really just the attention to the delightfulness that's happening right now that leads into the next moment.
A moment to moment.
Yeah. It's kind of like, I don't know how these things pop in my head because it's hilarious. Like I'm thinking about AA. I've never really been to AA. Like I don't even know, but I don't know a lot about AA. But what I do know is they're like one day at a time. Mm-hmm. One day, keep coming back. It works. Whatever their phrase is, keep coming back. It works. It works. One day at a time. And I'm like, oh, right. Because an alcoholic or a drug addict can't say, well, I'm going to stay sober for a year. They can't say that. They can just say, I can stay sober today. Cool. Right. Mm-hmm. And so it's the same thing with us right now. It's like, you don't have to worry about the next moment. You can just be in this moment. Mm-hmm. Remembering that you are the loving, and that will lead to the next moment.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
So as you let this wash over you, this being in the loving that you already are, this beautiful spiritual being having a human experience, this is kind of where I think we can giggle about life, because it's so easy to get caught up in the human form of life. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I am sitting here laser coaching and I do all of these things too. So do not think that I am like over here going, yeah, right, I got it all. No. I'm the same way. I'm like, today I got so mad. Like I had a phone call with someone and he said like one thing and I got so mad. And I was mad for about 6 hours after that. My stomach was in knots. I was so mad. I was like, why does he say that? No, no, no. And it was a work colleague. And I was like, what is wrong with me? Like, I just got so triggered. But now now I'm past it. I worked out and, jumped on the trampoline and got all the energy out. And now I can look back and laugh at this human form that just got so mad, like made up a whole story.
Right.
About this one thing somebody said to me. And I made a whole story about it. And I was mad for 6 hours. And I'm like, oh my God, that's hilarious. That I like freaked out about. Okay. Human form, right? It just does,
Right.
it just wants to experience things. So when you're truly a spiritual being having a human experience and you're in your loving, can you reflect on your life with more lightness and more kindness and more laughter of like how you make up stories about everything and you think it's real?
Right. Yeah. Lots of stories.
And it's kind of funny because it's like, oh my God, we're like all deluded that we forget. But that's the laugh, that's the joy part, is like, right, like we take this really seriously, this thing here on earth.
Mm-hmm. We do.
Right?
It's almost like FOMO for our lives. At least that's
Yeah.
my experience. Like, what am I going to miss out if I'm in this ick and not in the joy? Like, I don't want to miss out on anything. I want to live in that presence.
How funny that is of like,
mm-hmm.
like, oh my God, your sweet mind is like FOMO of being in the ick and not being in the joy. Like it's like, what? Like if you're right, what? Like you're, I say like you're a producer. So, like you're the storyteller of your life. And that's where I said earlier, like you are responsible for it all. You're the co-creator of this experience that you have, but it's not to be used against you. It's to understand that like you get to tell a different story.
Mm-hmm.
You are responsible for the story that you tell yourself about yourself. And when you start to step back and look at it and kind of giggle,
mm-hmm.
then you start to go, oh my God, like what kind of movie am I watching of my life? And like, it's not tragic. It's like it's always like a comedy, but we make it tragedy as it is in human form.
Right. It's like plot twist.
Yeah. Plot twist.
It kind of reminds me, with Ron, Dr. Holnick, when he would say, I'm going to butcher the sentence, but it's your fantasy. Why aren't you winning in your own fantasy?
Yes. If you're going to have a future fantasy, you may as well win in your own fantasy.
Right.
Right. So even right now, when you're like, well, the thing is like, how am I going to sustain this? Well, then win in your own fantasy.
Right. Oh, what a great reminder. And yes, I'm going to win in my fantasy.
Yeah. It's really just, it's this point of view shift of like, where am I going to put my energy and attention? Which, where am I going to look? Am I going to look at the, how am I going to do it? Or am I going to look at the, wow, I feel really in my loving and like, what's one thing I could do to sustain this? What's one thing that feels really delightful and joyful to me to remind me to be in the loving, not to love myself, but to be in the loving.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the be in the loving.
Yeah, like, so it's just starting to like have a different point of view, which it's really all it is. And then it starts us down a different track. All right, we're gonna pause for a little station break and be back. And then we're gonna wrap up the coaching, and then I have some laser questions that I'll ask you, which is super fun, which Shelley does not know in advance when I'm gonna ask her. You're listening to Rock Your Life. It's super fun, don't worry. Rock Your Life with Ari and Alexander. We are on the Fun for Life radio station on the Dash Network, and we'll be right back. Okay, so what I'm gonna ask, we're gonna wrap up a little bit, and then I'll just ask you like what you're watching right now, since you're a producer.
Okay.
What's your favorite thing about Seattle? COVID's over, or when you feel like traveling, where are you going to travel?
Mm.
And then I'm going to ask you um, what's the one thing that what's one thing that's delightful for you to do to stay in your loving?
Oh boy.
And don't worry, there's no right or wrong here. Okay. All right. We're going to come back. Okay, great. Welcome back to Rock Your Life with Ari and Alexander on Fun for Life Radio. I love being part of the Fun for Life Radio family. There's so many great shows on this station. So be sure to check out a lot of the other shows. My friend Pili Montilla has a show called Truth and Tunes with Pili Montilla, and she's a music expert, really cultured music expert. And she has all these cool behind the scenes interviews with other producers and music makers. And be sure to check out Pili's show. It's really cool. All right, so I'm here with Shelley. We're doing some laser coaching, and we're going to wrap up here in a minute. And I just wanted to see what's present for you right now, Shelley.
I am just in such gratitude. So thank you for reaching out and asking me to be part of your show. And I definitely have taken a lot from our call.
Oh, good.
And so just a lot of loving gratitude for you.
Good. Well, thank you. It's my pleasure because I'm in the loving. I'm just being in the loving with you. I'm just, reflecting you to you. And I think that's very important too of, who can we get reflections from that help remind us who we are. And you do have a community of, spiritual friends and that can support you in doing that too. So I want to just check in around this joy factor.
Okay.
And this, when you can reflect on yourself now and desiring to experience more joy in your friendships and your relationships and different aspects of life, what brings you joy? Like, what helps you get into that joyful feeling experience?
Connection, like real authentic connection with someone. So, and that can just be from a phone call or reaching out to someone and saying, hello, I'm thinking of you. For me, I think being in that joy, it all stems from that deep connection.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. And is that something that you do consistently in your week?
I do it as consistently as I can do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a little tricky the last few months, but it's one place that I tend to reach out the most.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like I've let it slide, which is probably why I'm not feeling as joyful these days.
Yeah. It sounds like that. If connection is important to you and that's where you get fed, then it's just like working out or eating healthy or whatever. Like that's a place where you have an opportunity to create some consistency, like once a week having a Zoom date with someone or, however you like to do it, if it's just a phone call or a Zoom call or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And that's where the self-care comes in.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so I'm a big fan of just pick one thing.
Got it.
Right.
Okay.
Don't pick a lot of things, just like one thing to really focus on for self-care, to do self-care for yourself and you're connecting with people. So does that sound like something you could do like once a week?
Yes, I could do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Finding someone who I can really count on to show up for me as well.
Yeah, exactly. That you nourish and get fed with. And then when you're in this loving place of being in the loving, what's your experience of being worthy in this? Then how does that relate? How does that show up when you're in your loving, through this conversation tonight? What happens with this worthiness place?
I feel like I matter. Like I'm worth someone's time if they're willing to, like, you took an hour of your time tonight to connect with me. I'm worthy of that connection.
Oh, yes, you are.
So it's very inner world, outer reality, or outer world, inner reality.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I mattered enough for you to take the time to reach out and ask me to be part of your project and your show. And that's means a lot to me.
Yeah, and I'm gonna reflect that right back to you, because you are responsible for your experience. This is your co-creation of life experience. So good job on you that you think you're worthy enough, that you created me to have a radio show, to say, hey, do you want to be on this radio show? So you could have the illusion that someone else was seeing your worthiness when it's been you the whole time.
Ah, nicely done.
So good job.
I produced my life very well then.
You have, right? So it's just an example of, I hope, if those of you listening can understand what I was just saying is what Shelley's doing, which is very, very common, is she projected her worthiness onto me, that I'm reflecting her worthiness and thinking she's worthy enough when only she can think she's worthy enough. So she knows she's worthy enough because either we're all worthy or none of us are worthy. She's just pretending like she doesn't know it. And she's projecting that I know it more than she does, which just isn't true. Because if you spot it, you got it.
Bam.
Well, I think we got to stop there, baby.
Oh, that's a pretty good one.
I said in a, oh my God, in an Insta story post about Valentine's Day, I was like, this whole thing about like, I love you. I love you. It's, and Byron Katie always says like, we don't ever actually love someone. All I can love is my image of you through my eyes of who I want you to be. And so I said in my Insta story post, I go, the actual reality is that we should say, I'm so glad I created this image of myself through you so that I could project the loving that I won't own for myself onto you, and then have you say it back to me so that I can feel good in myself. But screw it. We live in, a human world. So fuck it. I love you. Happy Valentine's Day. And I'm like, does anyone understand what I'm saying? Or do they like, could she speak English? Like, I don't know, but it's,
right.
If you get it, you get it. Like It's all an illusion of what we created. Okay, good. So I'm going to do some last questions with you.
Oh boy. Okay.
Fast track last questions. Okay. Since you are a fabulous television producer, what are you watching right now? What TV show?
Oh, I think I'm probably on round 3 of Bridgerton.
That's so cute.
It kind of blends the best of my soap background and some good acting and eye candy and all the good stuff.
Ooh, I have a good one. I have a good question. Who's your favorite celebrity that you've met or worked with?
That's tough.
Okay, well, think about it.
Okay, I'll come back to that one.
You'll come back to that. Okay. When you decide to travel again, where are you going to travel?
2 places. Baja, Mexico, to go visit the kids that I volunteer at an orphanage with, who I haven't been able to see in over a year and a half. And then probably Greece, because that was supposed to be on my agenda last summer for my birthday. And I have never been to Europe or Greece. So.
Oh, well, yeah, yes to that, all to that. Okay, good. And what's your favorite thing about Seattle?
I love when it is sunny outside, being able to drive down the freeway, and in my front view is Mount Rainier, this beautiful, majestic mountain, and in my rear view mirror is Mount Baker, and then the reality of, oh my God, I'm surrounded by 2 very large volcanoes hits in.
That's so cool.
But it's so beautiful because nowhere else in the country does that vantage point exist.
Oh, that sounds stunning. That's so beautiful.
But only on a nice day.
Only on a nice day. Okay, well, I want you to use that though as your reflection too, of remembering that see, life shows up in the volcanoes as well as the sunshine.
Absolutely.
Just like your life shows up in all aspects as well.
Yeah, it's a great one.
Back to the celebrity. All right.
Oh,
what's a fun, or just doesn't have to be your favorite, but like what's some fun experience?
Will Smith is always fun.
Really?
He would bring light and laughter at 2 a.m. on a really long Friday night and make it worth working there.
Oh, that's so cool, because he seems like that, and to hear that he really is like that is great. Yep. I love that.
And really deep. Funny, but also really deep and heart of gold.
Oh, I love that. Ooh, thanks. That just gave me chills.
Of
That's great.
course.
All right. Well, I love you so much, Shelley.
I
Cheers
love
to
you too.
you and your joy factor. And thanks for being here. And thanks to all of you listening to Rock Your Life with Arian Alexander. I'll talk to you next week.